board, and I can. So yes, I can see people coming to join us. So I'll give them a little or 2 minute more because our last session ran on a minute or two over, as things tend to do.
Quite all right.
Are you having a busy week with it being Maternal Mental Health Week?
Yeah, lots of things going on. Yeah.
Are you going to share a screen with us?
Not today, no.
That's
I thought people might have had enough PowerPoints.
No, that's fine. I was just going to say you could check it for a minute or two, but that's fine. So thank you to all of you who are coming in to join us. I know some of you will still be maybe looking for those links to come. So I'll do a bit of an introduction and that'll give a few people time to come and join us. And I am absolutely delighted to welcome Rosey Adams to our Northern Ireland Maternal Mental Health Conference this year. Rosey is the founder of PND and Me, an online perinatal mental health peer support network, and she hosts a weekly Twitter chat, #PNDR, every Wednesday from 8 to 9 for anyone who needs support. She's also a mum of 3 children, aged 13, 11 and 8. And she is an expert by experience on perinatal mental health for her local health board. And I really should say personally, Rosey is one of the very first people I met on that Twitter whenever I first started to tentatively begin to speak out about my own personal experience of perinatal mental illness. And she was such a wonderful encouragement, and I got such help and support from PNDR, and even just from Rosey and from reading her stories, and particularly in those early days when I felt I was very alone. But I know that my story of having help and support from her is replicated so many thousands of times by mums all over the UK who have had just such an amazing experience getting to know Rosey, this wonderful woman that she is and the inspiration that she is. So we're really thrilled to have you share with us here today, Rosey, and I can see some more people are continually joining us, but I am going to hand over to you and ask you to share with us what you will, and thank you again for coming to join us.
Thank you for inviting me. So I thought it might be helpful just to give a little bit of a background about me and kind of how I ended up doing what I do with peer support. So as Lindsay said, I have 3 children, and I had antenatal and postnatal depression with all 3 of them. To varying different degrees. It was all in the sort of mild to moderate category. However, I was living in the Western Isles in Scotland, so I was very remote and there wasn't really any access to specialist services or anything like that, or peer support. And I was 19 when I had my daughter, my eldest. So, I had the whole being a young mum and sort of stigma that can be attached to that, and the self-stigma as well about being a young mum and not wanting to be judged and things like that. So my experiences, did really were made worse really by being so isolated and not having access to support, and not really knowing what it was that I was going through. I'd had depression in the past, but didn't really know anything about postnatal depression or antenatal depression. So that's kind of why I do what I do now. It's a lot about peer support, but it's also about awareness about these things, so people know that it's okay to talk about these things. So PND and Me actually came about because in late 2013, so December 2013, it was my youngest child who didn't sleep very well, wasn't sleeping. And I sort of came up with this poem, PND and Me, and I started sharing it on social media and joined Twitter, being a complete newbie to Twitter, didn't really know what I was doing. Just to sort of share it and get it out there, and realize there was this massive community of like mental health, and there were people talking about maternal mental health and postnatal depression and things like that. And I noticed that there was lots of hours dedicated to things, so it was sort of hashtag handmade hour, and different counties and things had their own hour, and I was like, it's not one about maternal mental health. I did find that there was an American version, so it was PPD Chat at the time, that was running, but there wasn't one for the UK. So I thought, right, I'll give this a go. I didn't have any plans with PND Hour to be what it is and what it turned into. It was just an idea, and it just snowballed really. So PND Hour started off, it's hashtag PND Hour, but we talk about everything surrounding maternal mental illness, and we also talk about dad's mental health as well. So it's really important that we include the whole family unit in the support that we offer. So PND hour runs, as Lindsay said, is every Wednesday between 8 and 9 p.m. Two of the probably most popular topics that we cover are returning to work. So that can bring up a lot of emotions and, you know, not knowing whether or not you've got the support of your employer and all this sort of things. And then the second and probably the most popular one is actually having another baby after you've had a maternal mental illness. So there is a huge conversation there around whether or not you feel able to have another baby. You know, what if I go through things again? You know, a lot of mums who have had postpartum psychosis just absolutely don't want to risk going through that again. So that's always a really, really popular chat. And, you know, people often ask me as well, you know, I had postnatal depression with my first, you know, why did I want to go through it all again? And I think I had them all quite close together. So I think, you know, if I hadn't have done that, I probably would have had time to think about it. But I going through postnatal depression, you know, the second and third time, and in the mental health I had in my pregnancy, I was more aware of what it was and what my triggers were, and, you know, how to look after myself better. So you do learn, you know, to sort of these tips and tricks on how to look after yourself a bit better. So the amazing thing about PND Hour is, you know, it's online. So if you can access it from your phone, you know, your laptop, iPad, you know, and you can access it from the safe space of your home. So if you're not quite ready to go out there and actually attend a support group, and obviously over the last year and a half that's been quite difficult, it's been, you know, almost non-existent at some points, having that support on your phone, knowing that it's there every single week. And the amount of people that I do get messages from, you know, every now and then saying, I've never joined in, I've never, you know, never tweeted, but I read it every week and I know that what I'm going through, I'm not alone in that, you know, so they know that they're not on their own, and how they're feeling is normal to an extent, you know, for what it is they're experiencing. And, you know, it just gives you that connection that is so important when you're feeling as low as you can when you've got maternal mental illness. You know, from my own experience, I did feel like I was the only one that was experiencing this. I didn't realize other people were going through it as well, because nobody was talking about it. So, you know, PND Hour provides that safe space. It provides that hope and that connection that people need. And I like the fact that even though it's on a public forum, you know, people, you know, you can choose to have a private account on Twitter, but actually a lot of people don't. And they have, you know, accounts that are anonymous to an extent sometimes, but they are so open and so honest. And it's amazing to see it every single week how beautifully honest people are about what it is they're going through, and knowing that the people they're talking to are supportive. And it does, even though it's on a public forum, it feels like you're being held in this lovely little community, and everybody's always so lovely and so welcoming. And, you know, we do get new people joining in every week. And I just think that there's a huge power in sharing your experiences with other people. And I think as you kind of go along your recovery journey, you know, that's what we were talking about on PND Hour last night. You know, there's a huge power in sharing what you're going through, and knowing that, you know, your journey could be an inspiration to other people as well, you know, and just being able to share your experiences and what helped you. And actually that can be, you know, beneficial on both parts. You know, you can then gain things that maybe you hadn't thought about before to try, or, you know, other people might maybe think the same about your experience and what you've been going through to sort of help you feel better. And it just normalizes that conversation of the difficult parts of motherhood that we don't always talk about. You know, the different emotions that come up when you have postnatal depression or maternal mental illnesses, you know, things like rage and anger, and just all these things that we don't necessarily talk about when it comes to postnatal depression and motherhood and maternal mental illness. You know, it's all well and good reading the signs and symptoms, but actually talking to other people that are going through it is hugely beneficial. And the same goes for, you know, in-person support groups, and just knowing that even if the conversations you're having, you know, I run a support group in Perth in Scotland, where I am, and quite often the conversations that you have in those kind of groups don't always relate directly to maternal mental illness. It could be about baby not sleeping or things like that, but it's knowing that if you wanted to talk about these things, that you're going to be held, you're going to be in that safe space, and that it's okay to talk about these things. Because quite often when you go to mother and baby groups, you can feel like they've got it all together and you don't, and you think, oh, why is it like this, and why am I the only one that's struggling? But if you go to a support group or you access a support group online, you can listen to people talking about the same things that you're experiencing, and you'd be like, oh my goodness, I'm not on my own. This is that power of that connection to other people that are going through similar things is huge and so beneficial. And I think my favorite thing about peer support is probably that it works really brilliantly alongside other services. If women have access to these other services, which are slowly getting there across the UK, and there are more and more specialist services popping up across the UK, that it creates that little sort of bridging of the gap, basically. So when you feel like maybe you're struggling, you can go to a support group or access a support group online, such as PND Hour, or a local support group online, and you can share those experiences and realize that you're not alone. And while you're waiting for access to other services, because obviously we know sometimes that access isn't immediate, you do have to wait a bit, so it sort of bridges that little bit of a gap of having somewhere to talk and somewhere safe to feel held and supported. And it works brilliantly alongside professional and therapies and things like that. And I just think that's kind of where peer support comes into its own. It gives you that opportunity to talk to other people that are going through similar things, and it's a different conversation that you can have with somebody that's going through it than with a healthcare professional, therapy, counselling, things like that. It's a different conversation, because whilst they might have their own experiences, this counsellor or therapist might have their own experiences of mental illness, they obviously have boundaries and they can't always talk about these things. So having peer support just makes that conversation a little bit easier. And I think a lot of what I do with peer support is signposting. So I know what my limits are. I know that obviously I'm based in Scotland, so I'm not going to always be near to other people that are accessing the peer support online, because obviously with online peer support it's it covers a huge area. There's people from all over the world that will access it sometimes. But so it's for me, it's about a safe peer support, and that's the really important point. I think that knowing that the people that are supporting the mums, because quite often it is people that have quite rightly had they're in that position because they've experienced something themselves, so they are able to offer that peer support that you wouldn't get otherwise. It's about them being supported and knowing that they've got somewhere to go if perhaps something that they're hearing or they're the person they're supporting is perhaps bringing things up for them. It's about them knowing that they've got someone to talk to, and the right kind of training and things like this is really important as well. Myself, I've got things like mental health first aid, and I'm actually a trained mental health peer supporter as well, as long as alongside my own experiences. So I know that what my boundaries are, I know how to keep myself safe while I'm supporting other people. And a lot of what I do with signposting, I will signpost people to whatever services are available in their area, because while online support is incredibly beneficial, it doesn't necessarily replace that in-person support that can be different and offers a slightly different conversation, slightly different dynamic. So I think that's probably kind of summed it up really, Lindsay. I don't know if you want any more from me, or if there's any questions from anybody.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Rosie. I do. We haven't had any questions there in the chat as yet, but please feel free, if you are listening to Rosie, to put some questions into the chat, and to ask her something. I know she'd be very happy to answer. Maybe while they are, I'll ask you something. Has it been how has it been going from, I suppose, your own personal experience of mental illness and running that on Twitter, to then going into work as an expert by experience in the Health Trust? What's that been like?
it's been an experience. Yeah, I think it's about for me, it's about knowing the value of that position that I've got, knowing that, you know, while I don't have letters after my name, my experience is still as valuable as other people's, you know. And it's about understanding that for me, the position that I'm in with as an expert by experience, it's about not just my experience, because I didn't have my children in the area that I'm working in. So it's about me gathering the voices, being the sort of the loudspeaker, I suppose, for the voices of other people who have had their babies in the health board area that I'm working in, and being able to share that with the professionals that I'm working in, and this implementation team that I'm a member of, and just taking their experiences and holding that, and knowing that, you know, I will keep, you know, their story safe, and that we will share that in a way that works, and, you know, making sure that if they're going to be sharing their experiences, that they are safe as well. So it's more than just me being the expert by experience. For me, it's about making sure that other people's voices are heard as well. So
Absolutely. I can see, I don't know whether you can see the question mark.
yeah.
Mary, who is one of our absolute champions here, a health visitor, and one of our champions for the new services, has left you a lovely comment there to see and hear you actually
Yeah.
on social media. And I think probably
Yeah. That sort of brings it onto another point, actually, and I didn't say anything about it because I completely forgot. The thing about PND Hour, and the sort of unexpected bonus of it, was actually that we have a lot of healthcare professionals that watch it, and sometimes we do get them joining in as well, GPs, health visitors, midwives, etc. And we do have occasional hours that have been sort of dedicated to, you know, oh, I've sort of done a joint chat with health visitors and midwives and things in the past. And it's sort of weekly feedback, because I feel that sometimes in these kind of services, you don't necessarily always get the sort of positive feedback. It can be the negative feedback, and sometimes just no feedback at all. So you don't know if what you're doing is working, if it's helping the mums that you're working with. And it's sort of a weekly feedback and personal development, I suppose, because you can read what these mums need, what they're benefiting from, you know, what support they have found helpful, what they haven't found helpful. And just it's just a really good place for healthcare professionals to dip into, and just to see what the experiences are of, you know, mums and their families of perinatal mental health services. And, you know, we did a chat a couple of weeks ago with a West London mother and baby unit or perinatal mental health team, and it was about barriers to accessing support, and that can be a big one as well, you know. And it's all these things that we know about. It's like preaching to the choir, you know, about you know, access to support being, you know, the stigma and things like that can be difficult, and all these sort of aspects of it that can be challenging to accessing support services. So it's just a really good sort of tool for people to know about, you know, healthcare professionals. It's fantastic for people to signpost to PND Hour, but also for their own personal development, to actually to have that weekly opportunity to see what's working, what's not, you know, and just to learn. It's a really good learning opportunity, really, for healthcare professionals.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to ask you one final question before we let you go, if that's okay. It's in two
Yep.
parts.
Okay.
So given your lived experience, and you now that you work as an expert by experience, what first of all would you say to a mum or dad, but we have plenty of mums here who have joined us today who have their own experience of mental ill health, who might be interested in sharing their story in some way or another? What piece of advice would you have for them? And also, what piece of advice would you have for the healthcare professionals who are with us about working alongside mums with lived experience who might be involved in sharing their story?
I think for me, it's about making sure that the mum, so if you're the mum or you're the healthcare professional, it's making sure that that person is far along enough their journey, you know, far along their journey enough to know what their triggers are, and, you know, how to make sure that they keep themselves safe. It's about keeping people safe. And, you know, for my own sort of personal experience, when I share my story, I share quite a heavily edited version of my story. I share the stuff that I feel safe enough sharing, and you know, there are things that I don't share because I know that they are too difficult for me to share. So it's if a woman wants to share her story, that's amazing, but it's really about making sure that you are in the right headspace to do it, because I think, and everybody's the same really, you know, you sort of feel like you're kind of feeling all right, and then you think, right, I really want to help other people, and it's amazing. And I think, speaking from experience as well, I was probably not quite in that place when I started P&D and Me, but I got to that place, and I'm now in that place, you know. It was, you know, so I know kind of back then that I wasn't perhaps in the right space, but it was the right time for me to be starting it. So it's just really about making sure that you're in the right space to do it, you've got the right support, and that's really important, knowing that you've got the right support, whether that's family, friends, and professional support as well, you've got that access. And just about keeping yourself safe, but also knowing the value in your sharing your story and sharing your experience, and knowing how powerful that can be for healthcare professionals to hear that, because sometimes, and it is easy to sort of get bogged down in numbers and paperwork, for healthcare professionals to actually see the women and the families behind the paperwork and the stories and the numbers, and it can just bring that to the forefront, and remind everybody why it's so important for people with lived experience to share that, as long as they're supported and they feel that they're in the right, you know, right space to do that. So that would probably be my advice.
That's absolutely fantastic. Well, Rosey, thank you very much for joining us, particularly because I know you'll be exceptionally busy this week, given that it's Health Awareness Week. So we really appreciate you giving up your time. Of course,
No problem.
come to Northern Ireland, maybe sometime we will be able to invite you to actually come. But thank you for coming to join us on Zoom. It's been absolutely brilliant. And thank you to all of our attendees for tuning in. We are going to have a short break now, so you have a little break between now and 3 o'clock to get a cup of tea or go to the loo or whatever it is you need to do, let the dog out. And when we come back at 3 o'clock, we will have our keynote address for the afternoon from Luciana Berger, who is the Maternal Mental Health Alliance Chair. So do tune back in with your links for that. But thank you again, Rosey, so very much, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
Take care. Bye bye.